Hello. Thanks, everybody. I'm not used to being mic'd up. I sound like my voice booming from the ceiling. But welcome. Thanks for coming today. We're talking about the cross-platform experience. I'm Chip Lewis. I'm Director of Web Analytics for Shutterfly. I've been a long-time Heap customer, so we started, I think, in 2019. But I'm getting ahead of myself because that's on my timeline slide. So if you would please, I have the clicker. Obviously, I don't do a lot of presenting. Here we go. So yeah, we started with Heap in 2019. They're in the middle, but my cross-platform tracking experience goes way back further than that. So I began at Snapfish 15 years ago, and we had mainly Adobe. We started with Mixpanel on the app. We then moved off of Mixpanel and moved on to Adobe briefly for a while for app tracking. So that was a challenging experience there. Snapfish at the time, we'd split out from Hewlett-Packard and we were in massive cost consolidation mode. So we then switched to GA 360 for probably 3 years. But after instrumenting mobile apps twice for traditional analytics tools like Adobe and Google, I thought there has to be a better way. So I began searching around the industry, and in a funny coincidence, Heap actually was in the same block in downtown San Francisco as our office, the Snapfish office. So discovered Heap, spent a lot of quality time with them. We implemented Heap in 2019. Then in 2020, Shutterfly and Snapfish merged. So this was an exciting time. Shutterfly had been our #1 competitor. So it was nice to bring the two businesses together, obviously very similar businesses. And Shutterfly was the big kahuna that we were always chasing. So it's nice I felt like I got drafted by a pro team or something. Then shortly thereafter, in 2023, we tried to use Quantimetric for cross-platform tracking. Had a challenging experience implementing that. I was still a very strong Heap advocate, but there were people at Shutterfly that really thought Quantum was the way to go. So we went with that for a year. We were unable to actually get it fully working, and so then a year later, we finally switched to Contentsquare. So this was fortuitous for me because had we won the Heap business, or had we decided on Heap at the time I wanted to, we would have only gotten Heap. But by the time we were ready, we got Heap and Contentsquare. So it actually worked out really well. So I want to take a quick non-scientific survey of the room and ask you to raise your hand if you've had a wonderful experience implementing mobile app tracking. Anybody here? Not one. I was hoping someone could raise their hand so I could ask them where they worked. This is how I feel about tracking mobile apps. Honestly, I just can't stand it. Thankfully, I'm not quite as old as Clint Eastwood, but I still have the same attitude. Get off my lawn, mobile apps. They're so difficult. So why is mobile app tracking so challenging? Really, it reminds me of the early days of analytics tracking on websites where you had to hand code everything on the page. There's so much coding and planning involved on app tracking. It takes forever, and so you spend a year working on this. The developers hate doing it, and after a year, you sort of wind up with like half the data you set out to. And then to make it worse, you have to do it twice, because you have to do it for iOS, you have to do it for Android. And then finally, the app release process is terrible too. So if you don't get it right the first time, you have to go back, iterate on it, and then do another release through the App Store. So I've never had a good experience doing it except with Heap. The difference, and the reason Heap is the best answer, is because you have auto tracking. As we heard this morning, they just added more auto tracking support on Android, which is great because Android has always been the weaker link of the two. But auto tracking is really the only answer. You get immediately, you get all the data you need. You still have to really highlight the key metrics and make sure that the app passes revenue, but pretty much everything else, auto tracking takes care of it. So just as Heap is a great solution for site tracking because you instrument your core KPIs and then everything else is taken care of, it really works great for the app. The other reason I'm such a huge Heap fan is because it's a user-based data model rather than an event-based data model. So unlike event-based tracking models, Heap allows us to track users across platforms and across sessions. I don't know how many of you have built a Shutterfly photo book, but it takes a while. It's a real commitment. And very often your activity takes place across multiple sessions. You move back and forth from your phone as you need more pictures to the website where you build the book. You can also build the book on your phone, but if you're like me, the phone is too small to build a complex product like a photo book. So I definitely recommend using the internet for that. So I know I've talked a lot about Heap. I'm such a Heap fanboy that I actually have original Heap logo socks on today. So yeah, I've been a huge Heap fan for a long time. But now I want to talk a little bit about why we also love Contentsquare, digital experience analytics. So I did look at Contentsquare years ago when I chose Heap, but the main reason I went with Heap was the user-based data model. Contentsquare, I said, hey, can you track people across applications and the websites? They're like, well, we can give you the data. I'm like, we have the data. I want the data in my tool. So Heap allowed us to have that. But while I was working with Heap in the early days, they showed me an early version of journey analysis inside Heap on a slide. And it was this sunburst model, which I think is by far the best model for tracking user pathing or users moving across your applications, because you can see so much more on the screen. A traditional left-right model, no matter how big your monitor is, you don't get anywhere near the viewpoint that you see with journey analysis in this sunburst view. I'm really looking forward to sunburst cross-platform. So also love the heat maps. The one thing I remember the most about the first time I saw Contentsquare was the heat maps. I've never seen better heat maps in any product. I don't know how many of you have used Adobe, what's it called, Analytics, I forgot the name of it. The Adobe heat map, whatever it's called. It's just tragically poor. It doesn't give you any type of visibility that you can see in Contentsquare, just like right out of the box. So we love the heat maps. And of course, the other thing we like is session replay. When we first got session replay, I thought, I'm a data guy, right? I've done a lot of data analysis. I thought, what's the big deal with session replay? Well, I gotta say, I'm a huge fan now because you can really dive in to experiences and see exactly where users are getting stuck. I've watched my own sessions, which is kind of a weird thing to do. Just as I was getting used to session replay, I wanted to see how it looked in the tool versus how I experienced it as a user. So really love the session replay. And the other part about session replay that I really like is you can search within session replay. So if there's something you're looking for in analytics and you can't quite find it, very often the tool is smart enough to find what you're looking for inside session replay. So, am I on the right slide? It's what? Oh, right, thank you. Okay, so yeah, I didn't actually rehearse with the clicker, so I'm a little bit clumsy with that. But the customer journey breakthroughs we've gotten from Contentsquare are really super important. We've learned a lot about how users jump between platforms. Initially, this really surprised me how often users move back and forth. But I think in a business like Shutterfly, where you're building things out of your actual photos and all of your photos reside in your phone, in hindsight, I probably shouldn't have been surprised, but I was surprised until I saw the actual data inside the tool. We look at things like which platform are users most likely to start a project on. So project start is one of our really top level KPIs. So we spend a lot of marketing effort to get users to the sites. We spend a lot of sort of funnel analysis trying to get you into the proper path so you can find the product you're looking for. We have thousands and thousands of products. Honestly, I don't even know how many we have. But the point that we really care about and that we watch very closely is where do users start the project and what is standing in their way to get their project started. It's also, we find that users create more simple products and order a lot of photos, for example, from the app. Whereas if you want to build something complex, like a book or a calendar, you're much more likely to be doing that on the website. And where do users spend the most time shopping on our brands? So we have multiple photo brands, and Snapfish has sites in US, UK, Ireland, Australia, and New Zealand. And so it's interesting to watch users moving across our brands, particularly in the US, where we have the two brands that actually used to compete quite heavily with each other and now are part of the same family. So it's interesting for us to understand, you know, what products are users looking for on Snapfish and which products are users shopping for on Shutterfly. And where do users spend more time building products, on which of the two platforms? I talked about this a little bit a few minutes ago, but really the complex products, we see calendars and books. People spend most time building them on their desktops, and the more simple single surface products like ornaments and gifts and even mouse pads. I actually built a mouse pad recently on my phone. And do the friction points differ by platform? So I think one of the primary things we've learned is that the more we can align our platform's experience, so to have the app experience and the site experience be as aligned as possible, I think it really reduces friction points. Because users hop back and forth so much, the more similar the experience can be between the two platforms, the more likely our users are to complete and convert and not be confused. So, I'm over time. Thank you all very much for your time and attention.
Thank you. All right. Hi, everybody. I'm Andrew Fernandez. I'm the SVP of Engineering at Rent the Runway. So I have a kind of storied past with Rent the Runway. I actually worked there from 2013 through 2016, doing everything from launching their first mobile app to running product, to doing growth, to building internal tools, to doing stuff that I probably shouldn't have been doing. I was an engineer, still I'm an engineer. I left Rent the Runway in 2016 to co-found a company with two other Rent the Runway people. So that line runs really deep in my career. And then I recently came back to Rent the Runway in 2024, and I'm now heading up engineering, just the overall engineering experience. So cross-device analytics, like as an engineer and someone who has been building iOS apps forever, you know, going back to the very first versions of the App Store, first apps during 2008, 2009, this analytics was always impossible. In 2013, when we first launched our app, we were using a combination of Google Analytics, Apple's Analytics, spreadsheets, homegrown analytics, everything instrumented poorly, correctly sometimes, incorrectly sometimes, like we just didn't know because there weren't any tools. And then layer in anything to do with bugs or crash reports, and the whole thing spirals out of control. When I left and started Sawyer, one of the first things I did was, and that's why I put the old Heap logo on here, I was like, I never want to instrument an app ever again as an engineer, as a product owner. And yeah, that didn't actually work out perfectly, but we were early adopters, and if anybody here had ever used Heap back in the day, we would put the Heap logo in the footer to get the free sessions that they would give us, that viral marketing hack. But we were still using homegrown analytics, Google Analytics, Google Sheets, Metabase. This was a SaaS business. I don't know if anybody's familiar, but it was a vertically integrated SaaS platform for kids activities. So you book summer camps and things like that. So slightly different tracking, but the same problem nonetheless. Then when I came back to Rent the Runway, I was so happy that we were using Heap, like fully baked in. So all our apps were using it, our web experience was using it. We were even using Heap in our warehouse systems. And so we still have homegrown tech. We still have all the Google Sheets that you can imagine to do offline stuff, but we are living in a world that the problems are very different, and we're actually just looking at what our customers are doing and spending more time there. I'm assuming, Rent the Runway, I'm sure people have heard of it, but Rent the Runway is just an e-commerce company, right? I'm polling the audience, maybe not. It's not. We are this giant mishmash of things that people don't really see from the outside. We're an e-commerce business. We're a reservation system. We're one of the biggest dry cleaners in the United States. We run a subscription box. There's fashion, there's fit, there's weather. Are you in New York? Are you in Texas? Is it hot out? It's still 80 degrees in September and we still have fall clothes. And our usage from our customers is almost social media-like. And so I wanted to walk through one of the things that we really, really use Heap and Contentsquare for to try to understand our customers' picking journey. And so picking, for people who aren't familiar with Rent the Runway, is what you do when you need to do a subscription shipment. So Rent the Runway's main business model is we're a subscription for clothing. You can have 1 or 2 or 3 or 4. We even have customers doing 6 shipments a month, 5 items, 10 items. People just have gotten rid of their closets and completely are run by Rent the Runway clothes. So when you pick, this is what a normal pick day looks like across our web and app experience. Now, this is not one person. This is an amalgam of a lot of our customers in different time zones, but this used to be impossible to figure out. We used to have to stitch together pixels that we built ourselves, Google Analytics, what our warehouse was telling us, where are people deciding what to pick from, and what we have now is we just open up Heap and we go, cool, who has done harding, who has done building lists, what do people have in their bag, and what is the sort of curve of when it happens across devices. And so we watch people go from midnight to 5 a.m., scrolling in bed, just doom scrolling to try to find their shipment because they want to pick before the people wake up and get the stuff that they want. This is what happens to new arrivals. If there's any customers here, don't pick at night. Then there's this commute time, the 6 a.m. to 2 p.m. We see a shift between just mobile traffic to web and desktop, cross-device. People are on their laptops, they're still on the trains, they're driving, hopefully they're not picking while driving, but they probably are. And then you hit this 3 p.m. to afternoon moment, and it's a little bit more steady desktop because people are working. And then at night, pure phone again, 6 p.m. to midnight. And I've spent a lot of time with our customers. We do dinners and stuff, and they talk to us, and I love being the engineer in the room there because I'm like, what are you doing scrolling at 2 in the morning? And they're just like, that's my relaxation. And so this is where that social media experience sort of comes in. It's like we're not a traditional e-commerce business. Our customers are on our apps and our sites something like 4 to 16 times a week. It's kind of crazy. So what did we learn? So we see those things. We've been able to pinpoint to the hour, sometimes to the minute, when's the right time to send push notifications, when's the right time to post new styles, when's the right time to change over all of our content. And we do this every day is kind of different because you don't want to send an email on a Friday night because no one is on their phone looking at it. So you don't want to do it while they're doom scrolling, although sometimes we do, because we know they're on their phone, we know they're looking at products, and that's when we push things like new arrivals or offers and promos and things like that. We've also been able to pinpoint the right area of the site where the site and app, where people are spending time. And so we want to increase our engagement in harding. And we've literally increased things double digits, sometimes just by knowing when they're looking at a screen and kind of testing for that one-handed half asleep experience, and people will heart more. The engineer in me loves this one because we use Heap full session replay, cross-device tracking to figure out issues. You have a customer who says, hey, this product isn't showing for me, it's unavailable. We can pinpoint within minutes their session, what were they looking at, and we used to have to pull up 6 different logging systems, have engineers go chase down things, and we've kind of bypassed all that, and we just go straight to the session replay. We look at the events, we say, I see what's wrong, we go refresh some things, we message the customer right back, and they're happy. And our customer service team is also much happier, and our engineers are much happier. And This is by far my favorite. Like, I've used every analytics platform under the sun. Maybe not all of them. He's probably used more. But Google Analytics, all of these things, we would always run into this experience where we didn't track it was a thing. And as an engineer, it was always the worst thing in the world because you just launched this feature and you're like, crap, we didn't instrument it. We don't know. We just spent 3, 4, 6 sprints working on this thing. We launch it and we missed a key event. We don't have that anymore. Now, it's not perfect 100% of the time, but we can always tell if something is working, was the right thing, or affected our customer experience basically instantaneously. And this has made my sleep much better at launch time. And it is something that I think I underestimated in the past working with cross-device analytics. The App Store is the perfect example of you're beholden to Apple and you miss an event and your feature launches and now you're sitting there staring at nothing. And with auto tracking and a lot of the new improvements that they've made over the past, even recently on the Swift UI auto tracking, I'm an engineer, so this is nerdy now, but that stuff has just gone away, which is massive. And so it's really nice to be able to go to our exec team and to our leadership and be like, yeah, we don't have the dashboard right now, but give me 5 minutes. So that's it. Thank you.
Hey, Andrew, I have a question for you.
Yeah.
So one of the challenges I face when working with engineers is that I don't think they like doing analytics work. So
They don't.
I'm wondering if there's any advice or if you can help me understand how to get engineering more engaged in setting up analytics and getting the tracking correct.
Yeah, I found that in my experience, engineers are data driven, and usually this kind of stuff falls flat on them, but just bringing them into the reasons why and that they can actually see other things other than did this feature that they wanted me to launch work. You can see performance metrics, you can see load times, you can see all these things that they know are important, and getting them to care about those things is also just bringing them into why you care about them. But also auto tracking solves 99% of the problems.
Yeah. No, it's really true.
Has auto tracking actually had all the promise that it puts out into the world for you?
Yeah, I mean, nothing ever has all the promise, but I say it has 90% of the promise. I mean, as the points you made, I thought were really strong. I can't tell you back in the early days how many times a product or we'd release tracking on the apps and they get out in the wild and you'd forgotten something critical, right? I mean, sure, you know what your top 10 KPIs are, but there's a lot of things that are really significant data points and add a lot of value to tracking that don't really get thought all the way through in advance. And sometimes you see a feature or you launch a feature or a new part of the site and you just can't plan it out in advance. So auto tracking has really, I think, changed the world for us. It's also actually completely changed how we use Adobe Analytics. We still have Adobe Analytics. We use that for our marketing tracking and top level KPIs, but we've reduced our Adobe server calls by, 3 billion server calls. I mean, we saved a significant amount in our Adobe contract because of auto tracking and because of Heap and Contentsquare.
One of the questions I'm always curious about, because engineers hate this stuff, but the technology that goes into instrumenting all this, and do you have any specific processes that you follow to just make this easier? Because even with auto tracking, there's always something that we forgot, and I've always been on the hunt for what's that process that can make that even less of a problem? Because you have it.
Yeah,
you still miss
it's a great question. I think I don't really have a true process answer. I think my answer to that challenge is more about enabling your users, the users of the tool. I think it's really important that they are fully functional and able to self-serve. And I think that's been one of my real pleasant surprises because, as I said, I started with Heap. We had Heap for a long time, and Heap is incredibly powerful, but it's also you've got to be pretty intrepid data person, and really it takes time to understand it well enough to be able to define your own metrics, and then it's really important to name them properly, especially across devices. But Contentsquare has really surprised me how quickly people get value out of it. I mean, who can't read a heat map? Even like graphic designers are getting value out of it because of the heat maps. So, and the merchandisers too, they're always like, God, we just want to know how this one thing on our screen is doing. I'm like, well, great, look at the heat maps. And so I think it's reduced the time to insight like dramatically, the combination of the two tools. But it's not really a process thing. It's more like a user empowerment or enablement thing.
Yeah, just getting people to try stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah, I found with engineers, once you get them in to Contentsquare, Heap, into those dashboards, once they could see the live data view, then the engineers on my teams are always like, oh, we're sending too much, or we did this wrong, or like they immediately see the value because it feels like something native to them, like logging, like they're used to staring at things scrolling down the screen.
Yeah.
That has been my process of like, if you can't figure out what's wrong, go to the live view, do your own session, debug it that way. And we do that for lots of stuff, not just for analytics, we use it for bugs.
Yeah. No, live view, especially live view. It's funny because the app developers have been my biggest challenge to get them to engage. But when I show them live, they're like, wait a minute, what tool is this? So it was a big breakthrough for them, and they immediately wanted their own accounts, and they also use live view for debugging. Live view is my favorite, actually. Initially, when I started with Heap, I always used the sort of on-screen interface, but over the years have evolved to almost totally using live view. It's really, especially on apps, because again, I'm not an app lover, as I made clear.
They paired us up on purpose because I was an iOS engineer. So
okay, that's right.
We're being
got to balance the scale, right?
For the longest time, even app today, like in iOS and Android, you still end up having to manually instrument.
Yes.
And I don't think that's actually terrible. Because there's certain key events that you just should know exist.
Agreed.
Add to carts, orders, logins. Like these things are through and through true. Like they have to be gospel. And then everything else can be a little bit fuzzier because it's behavioral.
Yeah, no, totally true. And it goes back to your first question about auto tracking. So the vulnerability of auto tracking is if the site or app changes too much, it tracks something different. So you absolutely have to instrument your core KPIs and make sure they never break. That's sort of like the foundation of really good data, is making sure that your true KPIs are instrumented, and then rely on auto tracking to fill in all the other gaps.
We have time for questions, I think, right?
Does anyone have any questions for Shutterfly or Rent the Runway?
I can keep talking.
Yeah, Bobby.
So the question was, for what mechanism do you connect the app sessions and the web sessions? Is that correct? So the way that we do it at Rent the Runway is obviously like everybody has a user ID. We pass those along across different sessions, so we connect it by that sort of linking mechanism. And this is all built in, and so we're able to basically go into a user's profile in Heap and see this session happened and it was 11 minutes, and this session happened and it was 4 hours. And we know which one's app and which one's web. And so a lot of our debugging process and like user testing process goes through and looks at individual people's just journeys. And I find it really fascinating to build dashboards where you take a couple of your key users, let's say, high LTV subscribers, and we dashboard out their journey across different devices, just like what events are they doing on which devices, and it just automatically flows. But you do need to make sure that your sort of session management is all connected correctly.
Yeah, I think on Shutterfly we have it a little bit easier because in order to do anything really interesting on our platform, you need your photos. So we know who you are. So like a lot of, and we have your picture. I think a lot of challenges that many e-commerce companies have, we sort of get over because you have to be logged in to really do something fun with your photos. But Heap has always been really good at stitching users. I mean, I think some of the original Heap people came from Telium and brought a fair amount of user stitching technology with them. So even there are some areas of our site that you can play with without being logged in, and we do tend to be able to figure out who you are from that. But for the most part, I think we have it much easier than most e-commerce platforms because you have to be logged in. So.
Sorry, can you repeat the question? Oh.
Fashion preferences is, I think, what it, yeah.
So the question is, like, how do we track the changing customer preferences as a fashion company, I'm guessing. That is a question for our fashion team. I can tell you that we do monitor what everybody clicks on, what's in their shipments. Rent the Runway has been doing this for a long, long time, and hopefully we keep buying the right clothes, but it changes. So it's not an easy problem. We actually use a ton of data internally to understand what we would call pillar brands that are driving customer acquisition, or what are the top 5 styles that have to be in your first shipment in order for you to want to stay a customer. And so 50 other things like that.
For one more question.
I was wondering if you have a list of what you think maybe the top 1 or 2 metrics that are indicators of a great CX, and if there are any that you've seen your experience.
So top 1 to 2 metrics that are indicative of a great customer experience? Yeah, I mean, time on site is the obvious one, assuming that they're doing a lot of things while they're on the site. It's another metric that's kind of unusual for Shutterfly and Snapfish because many of our complex products take so much time to build. So that's number 1. Can you think of a number 2? Project start, obviously, we want you to start a project. But that's more for our sake than for your sake.
At Rent the Runway, I mean, we use a couple different things. We have multiple product lines. We have like a reservation business for special events, and we have the subscription business. But we tend to monitor straight from customer, like what they tell us. So like we actually call every customer when they sign up for our subscription, which is amazing, and not a lot of people do that. So we get straight from them what their happiness is, but then the more sort of implicit actions, things like the fit of their items in their first shipment. So that's something that we track. Like if you wore everything in your first shipment, that's like a 5-star shipment. But fit is such a messy problem in general, and every fashion company, e-commerce company on the planet is trying to solve it, that's not always possible to get in the first shot. And so then we rely on a lot of things like reviews and recommendations and algorithms to try to get that first shipment to be right. We used to historically also look at things like time to pick and the amount of time it takes, but then we talk to our customers and we find that they like scrolling, and like sometimes time to pick is not a bad thing. And so we've been trying to figure out what are the other things that we can do that can give us more direction, especially considering the use. And a lot of this has been unlocked by looking at like people doing stuff at different hours and seeing like, well, at night, like it might not be bad that they're scrolling for an hour. They might not want to, but they're gonna do it. And I'd rather they scroll on Rent the Runway than on TikTok or Instagram.
Thank you guys so much.